What's going on, guys? You're watching Knock On, and today we're diving deep into UFC 316. This pay-per-view has gotten mixed reactions, and honestly, I get it. It's a bit of a strange one. The main event doesn't really make the most sense, even on paper, but hey, it's still a fight, and there's a good chance it ends up delivering. The co-main event looks like a bit of a mismatch, possibly a one-sided beatdown, and throughout the card, you'll notice something unusual for a PPV. A heavy amount of lopsided matchups. A lot of the fights have big betting favorites. In fact, out of the 13 scheduled bouts, only 3 of them have relatively tight odds. That's never a great sign if you're hoping for competitive matchups top to bottom. The 3 closely lined fights are Patchy Mix versus Mario Bautista, which, honestly, is only close because Mix is stepping in on short notice and making his UFC debut. Then you've got Sergey Spivak versus Waldo Cortez Acosta, which is closer to a pick'em fight, and Chaos Williams versus Andreas Gustafsson, which has Williams as a slight favorite, but not to the point where the outcome feels locked in. Every other fight? Pretty wide odds. That includes both of the title fights. You don't often see 10 out of 13 fights with massive betting favorites on a main card of this scale. Now, in fairness, a few of those matchups changed due to injuries and pullouts. This wasn't the original layout for UFC 316. Guys like Johnny Walker, Marlon Vera, Shamil Gaziev, Renat Fakhretinov, and Uros Medic all had to withdraw. 2 of those guys were supposed to fight Chaos Williams. Walker was originally scheduled to face Azamat Murzakanov, Vera was booked to face Bautista, and Shamil was supposed to fight Spivak. So yeah, the reshuffling left some holes, and unfortunately, some prospects are getting rushed or matched up in odd ways. There are a few young names to keep an eye on though. Quinlan Salkel and Ju Sang Yu are the 2 best prospects on this card. No question, these guys have all the tools. They're dominant, athletic, and improving at a rapid pace. You could also include Wong Kong in the conversation, but since she's already taken a UFC loss, it's hard to place her above the other 2 right now. Salkil and Ju are legit. They're finishers, they fight with intent, and they've looked technical every step of the way. Definitely make time to watch their fights. They've got the future star vibe written all over them. Now, if we're talking about who the fighter of the night is, the biggest name with the most momentum and the most at stake, it's Merab Dvalishvili. No doubt about it. You can argue that he might already be the greatest bantamweight of all time, depending on your criteria. And if he beats Sean Ali, that conversation gets real. You'd be hard-pressed to find many better resumes at 135. He's the pressure king, and the way he's dominated ranked competition is already historic. On the flip side, the fighter with the most pressure, who desperately needs a win, is Ariana Lipski. Or should I say, Ariana Lipski D. Silva. Still getting used to that new name. I assume she got married, but it kind of came out of nowhere. Either way, she's the only fighter on this card coming in with back-to-back losses. She lost to Jasmine Jasudavicius, which is respectable. Jasmine's a good flyweight. But the other one, Karine Silva, that's the one that stings. Silva's not a bad fighter, but she's not elite either. And Lipski got thoroughly out-grappled in both bouts. If she loses again, especially to someone like Kong Wong, there's no guarantee she gets cut. But it does put her UFC future in serious question. Now, let's get into the fun stuff. What fight is going to be the most explosive? The banger of the night for me is Ju Sang Yu versus Jeka Saragi. These 2 are straight-up knockout artists. Ju is the sniper, technical and calculated, while Jeka is a wrecking ball. He brings that wild, unpredictable chaos with serious one-punch power. Ju's counter-striking is sharp as a blade. He's accurate, reactive, and always waiting for an opening. You couldn't find 2 more stylistically different strikers if you tried, but that contrast makes this a must-watch. They both want to end the fight standing, and they both have the tools to do it. For the most underrated matchup of the card, the sleeper pick, I'd go with Quinlan Salkel versus Yanel Ashmaz. It's a solid jump up in competition for Salkel. But that's exactly what makes it intriguing. Ashmaz is no slouch. He's got heavy hands and decent all-around skills. But this is where we'll see if Salkel is just a hot prospect or the real deal. He's looked phenomenal in every performance so far. This is a quality test and a high-level scrap if it plays out on the feet. the best fight on paper. The one that has the potential to be a technical, back-and-forth war might be Bruno Silva versus Joshua Van, two skilled flyweights with solid resumes and strong striking fundamentals. This feels like the most competitive matchup, and it's flying a bit under the radar. When I looked at the rest of the card, nothing else stood out as much in terms of competitive edge and technical ability. Mix versus Bautista has a chance, but with Mix coming in on short notice, it might not live up to the hype. Luque versus Holland? Too volatile. Muzakhanov versus Robertson? Nah. Ju vs Jeka could be fight of the night, but I still lean Silva versus Van because of how close and strategic it could be. Alright, let's jump into some of the actual breakdowns. First fight on the docket. Markel Medeiros versus Mark Chwinsky. Medeiros is 10-1 with 2 UFC fights already under his belt. He beat Austin Hubbard by split decision and Lenny Kenyons by unanimous decision. But interestingly, most of his pre-UFC wins came by finish. He's clearly got power and finishing instinct, but once he stepped into the octagon, his fights became much more tactical and competitive. That's the bump in competition. Chwinsky, on the other hand, is making his UFC debut. He's 8-0 and has fought in LFA and Anthony Pettis' promotion. Problem is, his competition hasn't been anything to write home about. He's mostly won by submission, although his striking looks slick. If you watched him without knowing his record, you'd think he was a striker first. He's got solid fundamentals and even throws in some flashy stuff, like that one-hand handstand kick. Seriously, it's wild. But again, the level of opposition hasn't tested him the way Medeiros has been tested. Now, stylistically, Medeiros is tricky. He's a pressure striker who switches stances constantly and uses hand traps to set up his shots. The actual strikes are pretty straightforward, but the setups make them deceptive. He controls space, forces reactions, and doesn't telegraph his attacks. That makes him hard to read. Chwinsky, meanwhile, is more traditional. Good combos, clean footwork, the occasional flash, but not as unpredictable. If Chwinsky leans on his grappling, he may create some moments for himself. But I think Medeiros defends enough takedowns and wins most of the striking exchanges. His pressure, stance switching, and ability to take angles will make it hard for Chwinsky to get into a rhythm. Medeiros also digs the body really well, and probably hits harder. I'm going Medeiros by second round TKO. I think he finds an angle, clips Chwinsky, and finishes it on the ground. Next up is Quinlan Solkill versus Yanel Ashmos in the lightweight division. Solkill has that perfect mix of technique, athleticism, and fight-ending power. He's 4 inches taller, has a 6-inch reach advantage, and looks clean everywhere. Striking, scrambles, top control, and even submissions. He's like a Swiss Army knife with knockout power. One of his most impressive moments was that KO against Blake Donnell, backstep overhand right into a left hook. Clinical stuff. Then there was the destruction of Anshul Jubilee. Solkill folded him in the first round, and Jubilee is a very technical fighter. That just shows how much pop Solkill has in his punches. Ashmos is tough, and he throws heat, but he's at his best in close range. Getting inside on a longer, sharper striker like Solkill is going to be a nightmare. Ashmos can either try to land something wild or go for control on the ground, but neither path looks likely to succeed. Solkill doesn't overextend, keeps his range, and if it hits the mat, he's got the better grappling too. I'm calling it Solkill by third round TKO. Ashmos gets lured into a trap and finishes on the ground, and that brings us to Zhu Sang-yu versus Jeka Saragi, another striker's delight. Yu is like a Korean sniper. He picks his shots, has real knockout precision, and mixes in kicks beautifully. He's even sparred with Max Holloway, and honestly, he looked solid. His best work is done from range, where he can counter and create angles, but if needed, he can shoot for takedowns, especially since Jeka's ground game is a liability. All of Jeka's losses have come via grappling, either submissions or ground and pound, not a single KO loss. But man, Yu can change that. I think Yu fights smart, wears Jeka down, gets him to the mat, and wins by third round ground and pound. TKO, still a lot more fights to go, and the breakdowns only get crazier from here. Stick around, Knock-On's got you covered. His output. You'll see him throw a long jab or leg kick from range, or he'll dart in with a flying knee or a spinning attack, often without much setup. And that's where things could get dangerous against someone like Patchy Mix, because Mix is the kind of fighter that capitalizes on chaos. He's slick, calm under pressure, and incredibly opportunistic with his grappling. You give him a wild entry or an off-balance moment, and he'll turn it into a back take or a submission attempt in seconds. That's how he beat guys like Magomed Magomedov and Rofion Storts in Bellator, turning a scramble into a choke before they even realized what happened. Mix's length and frame also make him a nightmare to deal with on the ground. He's tall, for the division, has great leverage, and knows how to use his limbs to control and trap opponents. Batista might be good at scrambling against more traditional wrestlers, but against someone like Mix, who wraps around you like a boa constrictor and constantly transitions between submissions, it's a completely different level. Mix is also excellent at chain grappling. If he doesn't get the first submission, he flows straight into the next with seamless precision. That's something you don't see a lot in the UFC's bantamweight division. Now, the question becomes, can Batista keep the fight standing and win a kickboxing match? I'm not convinced. While he has decent striking and good movement, he's not particularly dangerous on the feet. His strikes don't carry a lot of power, and his offense isn't varied enough to really make Mix hesitate. Patchy can afford to eat a couple shots just to get inside, especially knowing what awaits if he drags Batista to the mat. Also, this isn't Mix's first time under the bright lights. He's been in 5-round main events, he's headlined cards, and he's faced top-tier guys who posed way more diverse threats than Batista does. Sure, this is his UFC debut, and there's always a risk of octagon jitters, but Patchy just feels like one of those fighters built for big moments. He's not just coming to survive, he's coming to take over. I think Patchy Mix makes a statement here. He weathers the early movement and footwork of Batista, times a clinch entry or catches a kick, drags it to the ground, and finishes with a submission before the second round ends. So I'm going with Patchy Mix by second round rear naked choke. This is going to be the night everyone starts talking about him as a legitimate title threat. Then we move on to the co-main event. Diego Lopez versus Brian Ortega. And what a fascinating featherweight fight this is. It's explosive, unpredictable, and might just be one of the most exciting stylistic matchups you could possibly make in the division right now. Diego Lopez has gone from a short-notice debut loss to a fan-favorite status in record time. He brings wild, finishing-heavy energy to every fight, wild striking, slick submissions, constant aggression. And Brian Ortega? He's the original. Wild card. You can never count him out, no matter how the fight's going. Lopez has serious momentum right now. That head kick knockout of Sodiq Yusuff was insane. Before that, he put away Gavin Tucker with one of the slickest armbars we've seen in years. The guy is dangerous on the feet and on the ground. He's also massively improved his striking over time. He used to be reckless. Now he's still aggressive, but more calculated. He knows when to explode. And with how hittable Ortega can be, that might be a big factor early. Ortega, on the other hand, is an incredibly tough and seasoned fighter. He's fought the best of the best, Max Holloway, Alexander Volkanovski, Yair Rodriguez, and in every fight, he's shown insane grit and durability. But one thing has become clear, he takes a lot of damage. Even in his wins, he eats a ton of shots. And against a guy like Lopez, who throws with bad intentions, that's a dangerous game to play. However, Ortega has something Lopez has yet to deal with. World-class jiu-jitsu under extreme pressure. T-City doesn't just submit you, he submits you after nearly getting knocked out, after getting dominated on the feet. His guillotine against Cub Swanson, the triangle against Moicano, even that nasty mounted guillotine he nearly got Volkanovski with, those were moments that came out of nowhere. His submission threat is ever present, and Lopez might be confident. Enough in his own grappling to take risks that open the door for Ortega to capitalize. Striking-wise, Lopez is faster and sharper. Ortega throws with power but is a bit plodding in his footwork. If Lopez can stick and move, avoid brawling, and time his entries well, he could hurt Ortega early. But that's a big if, especially in a 3-round fight. Because the longer it goes, the more it favors Ortega. That chin, that cardio, that ability to absorb damage and fire back, it's carried him further than most. But I think this is Diego Lopez's moment. He's faster, more dynamic, and riding a wave of momentum. I think he hurts Ortega early, rocks him with something unexpected, and then finishes him with ground and pound, or even a club and sub scenario where he drops Ortega and finishes with a choke. I'll go bold. Diego Lopez by first-round submission. He makes a real statement here. And now, the main event, Dustin Poirier versus Islam Makhachev for the lightweight title. There's not a lot of mystery in what each guy wants to do here. Islam wants to take Poirier down and dominate. Poirier wants to keep it standing and make it ugly. And both guys have been in huge fights before. This isn't new to either of them. Islam's game is suffocating. He closes distance behind kicks, feints the jab, and once he gets you against the fence, he wraps up your legs, pulls you down, and makes it a slow, punishing fight. It's worked on Charles Oliveira, on Alexander Volkanovski, on everybody. But Poirier's boxing is the best in the division. Clean, powerful, well-timed combinations, especially when he's in a rhythm. His left hand is a missile, and if he lands it, he can put anyone in trouble, even someone as tough as Islam. The problem is, Poirier has been here before, against Khabib, and the result was the same story. Taken down, smothered, submitted. And while Poirier's takedown defense is solid, it's not elite. He's always had trouble with top-tier wrestlers. Dan Hooker took him down. Chandler got him down. Khabib obviously mauled him. Islam is even more methodical than Khabib in some ways. He doesn't rush, he builds pressure over rounds. And he's been striking more confidently too. That head kick knockout of Volkanovski was scary. It shows he's evolving. Dustin's only real hope is to catch Islam early, hurt him, and try to swarm. Before the takedown comes, he has a chance in the first 2 rounds, but once Islam gets the read, once he makes contact with the body, he'll start slowing Poirier down, start dragging him to the mat, and once it's there, it's game over. Islam's control is too good. His submission setups are surgical. And Poirier, for all his toughness and heart, has struggled to survive once elite grapplers get to his back. So my pick, Islam Makhachev by 3rd round rear naked choke. Poirier will have moments, he'll land some shots, maybe even hurt Islam, briefly, but over time, the wrestling pressure will break him down. Makhachev retains the belt and keeps the lightweight division locked down for the foreseeable future. This card is stacked. And if even half of these fights deliver on their potential, UFC 316 could be the best card of the year. Mario Bautista is a solid fighter, but going into this matchup, he's stepping into the lion's den against Patchy Mix, and that's no easy task. Bautista's striking style is a bit deceptive. He throws out quick jabs and immediately retracts, never really hanging around in the pocket too long. He'll either tap you with those fast shots or explode out of nowhere with wild looping haymakers in explosive exchanges. He's got a solid rear naked choke, and if he senses any weakness in your wrestling, he will absolutely take you to the mat. Likewise, if you can't deal with pressure on the cage, he's going to clamp you there and chip away. If you can't strike, he's going to try to beat you up on the feet. But against someone like Patchy Mix, that adaptability may not be enough, because the biggest hole in Bautista's game is his takedown defense. And when you're facing possibly the best submission artist in the entire bantamweight division, that's a massive problem. Patchy Mix isn't just slick with submissions, he's lethal. And if Bautista can't stop those takedowns, the fight might be over before it ever really gets going. Patchy Mix is like a longer, meaner, more submission-heavy version of Aljamain Sterling. Standing 5'11", with a 71.5-inch reach, the guy is absolutely huge for bantamweight. He dwarfs even someone like Schaum Ali, who is listed at the same height, but doesn't carry nearly the same size or width. Patchy's not just size though, he's skill. He knocked out Raufeon Stotts with a single knee, so we know the striking's there too, but it's his ground game that's absolutely terrifying. I see Patchy taking Bautista down early in the first round, asserting dominance, maybe hunting for a submission, but mostly just showing off that top control and vicious ground and pound. Then in round 2, I expect more of the same, except this time, he gets the finish. Patchy Mix by 2nd round submission. If he gets this win, he should be catapulted right into the top 5. And when that happens, this already stacked bantamweight division gets even deeper. Now let's shift to a middleweight clash. Kelvin Gastelum versus Joe Pyfer. This is an interesting one, because both guys carry fight-ending power. But let's be honest, Gastelum probably needs to move back down to welterweight. At 5'9", with a 71.5-inch reach, he's just too small to be fighting these middleweight tanks. Joe Pyfer, for example, is going to look like he's 2 divisions. Above him, he's taller, thicker, and much more physically imposing. But that said, Gastelum does have speed on his side. He's faster than most middleweights, and he's got that old-school one-punch knockout power in both hands. The problem is, it's become predictable. He's not exactly reinventing the wheel. It's jab left overhand, maybe a right hook left overhand. That's about it. There's nothing else to the game. Occasionally he'll mix in a high kick like he did against Adesanya, but it's rare. And because of that, most top-level opponents can see what's coming and prepare accordingly. Now, Pyfer, he's raw but powerful. He hits like a truck. He's got serious punching power, but he doesn't always set things up well. His punches can be a little telegraphed, a little too visible, which allows opponents to brace for them or counter. But when he does land clean, it's lights out. He's also got solid wrestling, strong double legs, and good top control. I can absolutely see him taking Gastelum down and neutralizing the threat that way. If he stands and trades for too long, though, that's a danger zone. Gastelum has one-shot kill power and a granite chin. He's the kind of guy who can be losing every round and still turn the fight with one left hand. So Pyfer can't get overconfident. He can't think he'll just walk Gastelum down and flatten him. He needs to wrestle, use his size, and control the fight. That's how he beat Abdulrazak Al-Hassan, by staying composed, going to the mat, and submitting him. If he sticks to that blueprint, I see him winning this one too. I'm going Joe Pyfer by decision, but I wouldn't be shocked if Gastelum pulled off the upset with a KO. Then we move to the co-main event, Juliana Pena defending her title against Kayla Harrison. And let's just be real here. This fight isn't about Pena. It's about Harrison. It's about whether Kayla Harrison is the next dominant force in the women's bantamweight division. And honestly, she might be. Pena, for all her heart and grit, is coming off a highly controversial win over Raquel Pennington. Most people thought Raquel won that fight. Pena just hasn't looked dominant. Kayla, on the other hand, is being viewed as the inevitable champion of the division, even though she's only had 2 fights in the UFC. And I can see why. Juliana's been in the game for a long time. She debuted in 2009, but she only has 16 fights. That's a crazy stat. Kayla Harrison debuted in 2018 and already has 19 fights. She's just more active, more aggressive, and arguably more skilled. Now, Harrison hasn't fought the who's who yet. She hasn't fought Amanda Nunes, Valentina Shevchenko, or Germaine de Randamie. But the way Pena wins this fight is simple. Harrison has to gas. That's her one path to victory. She can't go to the ground with Kayla, she'll get ragdolled. This isn't a scrappy brawl on the mat. This is a judo Olympian who will slam Pena on her head, a la Ronda Rousey vs Miesha Tate. If Juliana shoots a takedown, she's getting tossed like a child. And on the feet, Kayla's striking is cleaner and more powerful. Pena might be tough, she might be aggressive, but unless she drags this to the deep waters and Kayla runs out of gas, it's not happening. Kayla's probably going to absorb an early blitz from Pena, those wild windmill punches she loves to throw, and then just flip the switch. Slam her to the mat, land ground and pound, threaten with submissions, and eventually find the finish. I think Pena survives the first round, but I see Kayla adjusting and locking in something nasty in the second. Probably an armbar. Second round submission win for Kayla Harrison. And what's wild is that Pena, the undisputed defending champion, is a Pozoi 455 underdog. That might be the biggest odds gap for a reigning champ in UFC history. It's either her or Matt Serra against GSP in the rematch. Still, I get it. Harrison is that good. And finally, we're at the main event. The rematch that almost no one was calling for, Merab Dvalishvili versus Sean O'Malley, Part 2. Let's not sugarcoat it, Merab dominated the first fight. And while a rematch doesn't make a ton of sense right now, there is intrigue here. Can O'Malley do what he failed to do the first time and knock Merab out? Can he stuff the takedowns and land the perfect shot? Or will Merab continue his dominant run and strengthen his case as the bantamweight GOAT, right alongside Dominic Cruz? The talk around O'Malley is that he's changed. He's taken things more seriously. No more smoking, no more social media, just pure focus on the fight game. Is that because he lost to Merab and dropped the belt? Possibly. And if it's true, then maybe he comes into this fight more disciplined, sharper with his counters, and better prepared to deal with the wrestling pressure. But here's the thing. Merab wasn't even fighting at full aggression in that first fight. He was cautious, respectful of O'Malley's range and power. He didn't blitz like he normally does. If he decides to press more, add that classic, relentless pace back into the game, it could overwhelm O'Malley even more than before. Of course, that also opens up the window for a counter shot. So it's a double-edged sword. Merab has been training with killers, guys like Umar Nurmagomedov, so his overall game is likely improving rapidly. Honestly, I don't think this fight looks much different than the first. Merab's relentless. Cardio and wrestling pressure is going to drag O'Malley to the mat again and again. O'Malley might win a round somewhere in the middle, maybe round 2 or 3, but I see Merab taking 4 out of 5 rounds, cruising to another dominant decision win. From a betting perspective, Merab is sitting at 300 with O'Malley at plus 240. If you're betting, I wouldn't touch this one outright, but Merab in a parlay makes sense. If you're feeling wild, O'Malley by knockout is plus 575. That's his only path. He's not outpointing Merab, and he's definitely not submitting him. But if he lands the shot, hey, it could happen.